Hello everybody, welcome back to Monday Night Mythbusters.
Hey guys.
I'm Dr. Carolyn George of Vita Integrative Medicine and Leslie Harrington, Transformational Coach. And tonight we are coming at you with some information about the medications you take. So if we have anybody that's out there right now just kind of checking in, kind of joining us, what we'd like to do is just do a shout out, do a thumbs up for those who are on medications. And if you're on multiple medications, if you can just put the number when you're answering back, like 3 or 5 or 10, or how many different medications you're on.
Or even if you know somebody or you're taking care of somebody. So a lot of people, when you're a caretaker to your parents, you might have a plethora that you're dealing with.
You've got it, absolutely.
Parents, children,
Right, there's always people that we're caretakers of. So if you know of anybody, if you yourself are on multiple medications, and then we'll start to talk about some of these different medicines and just what things they might be contributing to in terms of imbalances with your nutrients.
Hi Naomi, hi Kristen. Yeah, so let's just jump right into that statistic. So about 49% of U.S. adults report actually taking a prescription medicine in the last 30 days. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the latest published, and that was actually, it's a little bit outdated even. So I imagine it might even be a little bit higher than that now,
right.
If I were to guess. So it's not uncommon. They're pretty much predominant in many households. Like I said, the medications today are becoming much more for chronic and ongoing, and they're being designed to kind of be forever. Back when they first started, nobody's ever done a lifelong trial, right? So these drugs weren't initially designed to be, with you for the rest of your life. They're designed to serve a purpose, and in most cases, be at a specific time, especially like the antibiotics and the types of drugs that might be seasonal or might be situational. But as you see more of the nervous system disorders and your antidepressants, those weren't initially, with people forever. And now most people think that they can't live without them. Mm-hmm. So these are things in the way the thinking has changed in society since like the days of the medicine man.
Right.
If you were to put him in today's world, he wouldn't know what to do with himself because back then it's taking care of a situation and then moving on from it.
So hi Teresa and Naomi and everybody else who's joined us. So those who've just joined us, what we're asking you to do is give a thumbs up and the number of medications you're on, not supplements, but medications, prescription medications. And so we're going to then kind of look at, in general, how many people are taking, and not maybe just you, but anybody that you're taking care of, parents, cousins, grandparents, children, just so we can kind of get an idea of the audience and how many medicines everybody's using.
Yeah, and like Naomi mentioned, she suffers from a particular condition that you might see some what they call comorbidities, right? So when you see one thing, oftentimes you might have additional symptoms and even a kind of a complementary condition, right?
Right.
So it's not unusual to have medications, even for blood pressure. You might have something that handles some of your heart rate, and then you have something that handles some of the extra fluid that you hold in your body. So it's not unusual to have 2 or 3 heart meds, and it might, for pain, you might be on different types of pain. Within each category of drug, you're dealing with different ways that they might block certain activities in your body and certain, factors that actually make your body kind of rock and roll the way it's supposed to.
Right. And so each time you're taking a medication, and we're definitely not saying not to take them, but it's just important to be aware of what they can affect, not only in terms of the things you want them to affect, right, but the side effects or the unintended consequences of being on them. And when they get studied, they usually get studied 1 or 2 at a time. There's very few studies that have, I'm not sure if there's been any studies of more than 4 medications taken together for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
And so we don't know the cumulative effect of being on multiple medications, but we do know kind of individually kind of how they affect the body. And the effect can be in many different ways. So we were just talking about some of the different nutrient deficiencies you can get. And before we dive into the different groups, I thought it would be interesting just to kind of talk about some of the different ways that you can get deficiencies. So you could get it because that medicine blocks your body from bringing into the body So maybe it blocks the direct uptake of calcium or magnesium or vitamin B12, or it can interfere with how that vitamin or mineral works in the body, or it can interfere with how your body gets rid of it. So maybe it blocks with the kidneys, and maybe it keeps too much in or allows too much out. So there's multiple different ways that these medications can interfere with nutrients and how they function. So that's way too complicated for us to go into each thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of categories.
There's a lot of categories, but I just wanted to let you know it wasn't all just that they blocked the uptake, or that they all made you pee it out too much. There's a variety of different ways.
Yeah, and I like to, a lot of people, when you think of like supplements versus medications typically are causing your body to stop doing something, or it's either enhancing something, or it's causing some form of a disruption for the most part, whereas a supplement is actually supporting your body's natural production of something, kind of in generalities, right? So I like to think of like a grandfather clock in the back of the clock, where it's got all those really fine-tuned components, and like when one of those components get off track, like the timer might slow down a little, and then you might see it like hitching. And then all of a sudden the second hand dies, and now the clock's not functioning. So as you start to pull out these tiny little pieces of what is a very fine, sophisticated system, things start to break down, and you might not be aware of them. So the difference is as well, when you understand that side effects are reported in a way that when the FDA is approving these drugs, the side effects are reported when they're doing these tests. So a side effect of nausea or a headache, or these are outward side effects, right? So if someone has a deficiency inside their body, they might not realize that they have their B12 is off, right? So B12 is a very common one that's known for metformin, which is a blood sugar type of medication. And the person might not report that. Neither would they report it to the doctor later to get that information back to the manufacturer. So it's not unusual that people wouldn't be aware that these things are going on in their body, but it's actually not an uncommon and unknown thing. So when you look, there's a lot of information, and it's compiled from a lot of different places. But stay till the end, guys, because we're going to give away a really cool resource that you can use for yourself as well as for other people. But it's really important, because most people will be like, well, I'm on this and I'm on this, and what can I do for this? And there's ways that you can get that information so that you can check out the particular drug that you might be working with or dealing with your loved one, and which nutrients are affected by those drugs.
Right, exactly. So, so tell me a little bit about kind of what your goal was in creating this list of all these different side effects or nutrient deficiencies associated with.
So my background was in pharmaceuticals for very long, for 15 years. And I had myself my own condition that was diagnosed a while back, and I found myself in my 30s on 5 different prescription medications. And I did not realize and understand what was happening to my body as a result of these medications. And I discovered that kind of later in the further testing that I was doing when I got into functional medicine, and I really started to look at more of the systemic parts of my body and not just the conventional labs. So I did see that I was extremely deficient in a lot of different, and the reason that triggered me to kind of go seek out that information is my blood sugar was running off, and I was not having trouble with my weight. I was in a really good place physically, but I wasn't metabolizing properly. My B vitamins were shot, my alpha lipeic, my CoQ10. I was pretty much like really malnutritioned, and it showed in my energy levels, in my body, in my skin. And when I started to really dive into that, it became a really big passion for me. Of course, I've also had other people in my family who have had a lot of not only drug interaction concerns, but also some of these deficiencies that it was, when they're older, it's hard. How do you get those nutrients back into their body?
It's difficult.
And then, so in the pharmacy world, the big thing is compliance. Patients don't take their medications. But if you felt better, because you might be more inclined to go and pick up your medication. But if you feel like you're not feeling good all the time, if someone's taking metformin and they have no energy and they start taking B12, they're going to feel a lot better, and they're going to be more adherent with their medication and be a more compliant patient. So that was one of the things. And the other thing is when I worked into pharmacy, I had this big initiative to bring health into pharmacy, right? So I thought at least bring the education so that the pharmacist could be aware and say, hey, you know, when you're filling out a statin drug, why don't you go over and get some CoQ10 to make sure that you're supplementing properly to make this medication, you know, work better in your body.
Right, exactly. And so it's always good to kind of seek out this information so you can do the best for what you're on, because this is not information that most doctors will have, most pharmacists will have. It's kind of hit and miss where you can have access to it, and so it's really upon you to do due diligence to kind of really see what you've been put on, what you're taking, and what that could be competing for in terms of nutrients in your body. So why don't you give us maybe tell us about the top 10 groups that we see nutrient deficiencies from.
Yeah, so the way that I broke it out, I looked at, in the pharmacy world, we have a lot of, access to some information as far as the top 10 prescribed drugs, the top 10 drugs that are by class, right? So your top classes would be your antihypertensives with your blood pressure medications, your pain medications, your nervous system disorders, there's thyroid, there's mental health, lipid regulators, so those are like the cholesterol, statins, drugs we were talking about, your diabetes medications, respiratory, anti-ulcerants, and thyroid. So those are and antibacterials. Those are your classes. So you have all different types of classes, and that's just the top 10, right? But within those classes, if you look at top drugs by total prescriptions written, you're looking at similar things that come from these classes. So you're looking, the top 2 are going to be heart medications. The next one is a thyroid medication. Then you've got a couple pain ones. You've got some stuff for GERD and gut health. Metformin, simvastatin. So same thing. You're seeing on the side of the top 10 actual prescriptions written fall within the categories of the drugs.
Right, exactly. And so why don't you give us a little kind of overview of a couple, maybe talk about statins a little bit.
So statins are a pretty straightforward, simple one. And the reason for that is that primarily CoQ10 is one of the biggest impacted nutrients in your body, but it's not a little nutrient. It plays a huge role in your body and at your cellular function. And so much so that Canada has been ruled that they have to actually put it on the statin label that CoQ10 is an impacted factor. So in the States, we were trying to find labels in the States that we could see if that was on there, and it looked like Canada was the only one that's posting CoQ10. So that's only one, so that's pretty cool. That's easy. Take your CoQ10 with your statin drug. Your metformin, B12, right? But when you look at some of your different types of heart medications, for instance, most of them are prescribed, or many of them, not all of them, would be prescribed with diuretics sometimes. Right. So the diuretic, you're looking at calcium, magnesium, potassium, vitamin C, zinc, some B vitamins, vitamin D, and phosphorus. So that's a lot. If you look at these as a whole, there's probably maybe 12 different nutrients, and a lot of them are the Bs that are, you could get from one multi-B, that are really encompassed in this whole discussion. But some of them are, one drug might only have one that's impacted, another drug might have a lot. Right. And the reason for the diuretics has to do with how that fluid is getting out of your body and what it's taking with it. So in that case, it's pulling out some of these minerals, and that's why that particular class has that issue.
It can be an issue, yeah. And so these are the kinds of things you want to think about. And then to add an extra level of complexity to this, so prescription medicines have, they go through a whole series of things in their making. They have to be made in pharmaceutical grade facilities. They have to have a certification that makes sure that they've double checked that what they say is in there is actually in there in the exact amount, well, within about 5%. So there's a lot of regulation of prescription medicines. In the supplement medicine or the supplement world, there is not that kind of detail or regulation. And so we talk about getting B vitamins, we talk about CoQ10, any of these nutrients that you're going to get in a supplement. You really have to be careful. We've talked about this before, but you have to do that same due diligence.
Exactly.
Because unless you actively look for that certificate of analysis, you actively look for a certificate of good manufacturing, then it could be made in somebody's garage, in their basement. It could be made someplace.
Well, and what they did a few years back, they found they did some random testing in some CVS, I believe it was CVS, Target,
GNC. Yeah, it was
and it turned out that some of the samples they did, it was like rice powder. So there were a lot of things that were being sold and they weren't what they said they were.
Right.
So when that random testing came about, there is a company, and I put in here some resources for you to really do your due diligence outside of if you're dealing with a practitioner. But if you're at Whole Foods, don't assume just because it's Whole Foods that they're going to carry the best stuff. I mean, I think sometimes, like, I have the perception that Whole Foods is supposed to be taking care of me, right?
Right.
They're maybe not looking at some of these things. You know, they're only looking at...
Well, they're looking at price points. They want to
Yeah.
make things available, and so sometimes the things that aren't certified are going to have a lower price point, but they still want you to buy it, right? That their grocery store. So they're going to have different availabilities, but you can look on the bottle, you can look on their website. There's ways that you can tell.
And there's a company called LabDoor. I think we've talked about it in different our different communications before. It's called labdoor.com, labdoor.com. And they do analysis. They do random testing. They give the manufacturer the opportunity to fix or do whatever, but then they have to do that at their own cost. But they give the findings to the consumer, and they're measured on like 5 different things. So they'll talk about efficacy, they'll talk about label accuracy. You know, so a probiotic might have on its label 100 million, whatever, and they might find 150 million. And that's not actually a really horrible thing. They just didn't have as many of the, the species didn't die in there, but it's still going to come up as a tap against their score. So you want to look at their score and you want to understand why it's rated that it's the way, rated the way that it is. So that is it, very, very important. So seeking out the supplements. The other thing that the document that I have here is it's going to show you actually ways that you can get these nutrients through food.
Yes.
So
it's always the best.
When you are concerned, say you're on an antidepressant, and it might be an SSRI. There's multiple different types of antidepressants that block different aspects, and you want to make sure that you're getting enough folate, for instance, but you're not really sure if it's causing side effects or not. So you can find out in this. It's going to tell you what are the common side effects, or not side effects, the common symptoms of low folate, low selenium, low B vitamins, and it lists all of these symptoms, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I have that. I might be lacking in this associated nutrient. These are the foods that I can eat. If I'm not feeling like I can get that enough from food, then you might want to consider taking a supplement. And then you also want to consider if your gut integrity is strong, because if you're not digesting super well, you can eat till the cows come home,
right?
Really good food, and you're really not getting as much from the food.
And it may not be the medicine; it may just be your underlying disease process. So
correct.
It's complicated. There's a lot of layers to kind of peel back, so to speak.
Yes. So again, there's mood disorders. There's anti-anxiety medication. Some people, I hear a lot of people that take Xanax to sleep.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
so
right.
It's an anti-anxiety. What's interesting about that is one of the things that causes depletion with Xanax is melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
And melatonin is essentially your sleep hormone. It's something that is really critical not only for your sleep, but it's secreted by the gut. So it gives you a good representation too of how well your gut is performing. So now when you're taking these benzodiazepines, then you're really potentially blocking out some of that melatonin. So you're taking it to sleep, and it could actually be disruptive to the sleep.
Yeah. So lots of those things. So if anybody has any questions there, just shout them out. Let us know if you have any questions. Maybe a specific medication if you're particularly interested in side effects or the nutrient deficiencies associated with one of those. And I think we've covered a lot of the things we said we'd talk about: the side effects, the supplements, how to tell they're safe, the top 10 most prescribed drugs that are causing these vitamin and nutrient deficiencies.
Yeah, so the document itself, like I said, the detail. So if you have a particular one, then it's a hormone can make it lazy. So if you're taking melatonin, Naomi, then it can make it lazy. So she's saying if you take melatonin, sometimes it will cause your body's own production to slow down.
Not with melatonin. With some things that can happen, but no, melatonin generally is very sensitive to the light, and so having your own isn't going to necessarily feed back that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what she was getting at.
Okay.
So yeah, in there, to your point, there are other ways that you can get melatonin and back in balance is by working on your circadian rhythm. So that has to do with having the light in the night and things like that. So all of the different disorders, we do cover the top 10 prescribed drugs, top 10 drug categories. If you're looking through this document and you see that the particular drug that you're on is not in here, you can look up what type of drug it is within that category, and then you should be able to tell by just the column header which one that you're dealing with.
Right.
But you can also email too if you have any questions and you want us to do some more digging for you. But this document you can get, I have it for the people who are watching on Facebook Live right now. I have it a coupon code in there, so it's free for you guys. So it's at leslieharrington.net/Vida, VIDA. So it's leslieharrington.net/Vida. Actually, we might be able to type that in there. I'm not on it.
Yeah, I can type that in there.
If you go on there, it's going to take you to a little checkout cart, but you're going to see that the cost is $0, and it's going to
show it to me and I'll type it down.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead, and you're saying it's going to take you to.
It's leslieharrington.net/VIDA.
Okay.
And it'll just take you to a checkout, and it's got the coupon code already in there, and it's listed at $0. And then it's going to have you download the documents. The document's big. Like I said, you're going to see all the different categories. There's a brief story at the beginning, and then it takes you through the different types of medication.
Sorry.
Thyroid meds are on there. So your thyroid. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Your thyroid medication, there wasn't a lot for thyroid. I think they were.
And so somebody was asking about the thyroid medication, the NP thyroid, if it attacks the thyroid.
So the iron.
So, so you can get lower iron with that. But the NP thyroid comes from desiccated pig, and so it's not going to necessarily attack the thyroid. But if you have antibodies to your own thyroid, this may not be the best thing for you. And some people, not for everybody, your own antibodies then can attack the medicine that you're using and make it, bind it and make it less effective. So some people that have Hashimoto's do not do well on the desiccated products, but many people do. So it really is an individual thing, but it's not that the NP thyroid attacks your own thyroid. It's more that it gets bound up by your body. Okay?
Yeah, so the other thing in here when you get your document, guys, is there's listed both generic and brand, and then sometimes there's like a brand category or a generic listed with multiple brands with that same name. So it gets a little bit confusing under each category of drugs. Some of them you're going to see the generic and the brand, and some of them you're going to see just one simple, straightforward name, which is, I think I referred to as is going to be the generic initially. So all of the hypertensive.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Actually, those are the brands. So they're listed on top of one another.
Right. So put them both there. She's got them both in there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of detail in here. So if you're not sure what your generic or brand is, you can certainly Google that real quick. But otherwise...
Here, just let's look up Lyrica. So somebody's name was asking for Lyrica.
Pregabalin.
Yeah.
So what you would do with Lyrica is you would look up what type of drug it is. So it's an NPR, is that what it said? Fibromyalgia.
Yeah. So what would be in your mental health ones?
No, it's in the nervous system.
Oh, okay.
But I got to find out what type it is. It's a CNS depressant. I know that's an interaction. I'll have to look that one for you, Naomi. I just have to find out which category it's under, and then I'll pull it from there. It's under the nervous system disorders.
Mm-hmm. But we don't see that there.
Yeah, so I have to find out.
There are so many,
There's
Naomi.
so many.
There's hundreds. So we haven't been able to put them all, list them all, but we'll get back to you and we'll send you a message.
Yeah. So, what you would want to find out is exactly what it's blocking,
group,
right? So it's going to tell you if it's a barbiturate, then your barbiturates are going to be B7, folate, D, K, calcium. So you'll see it that way. So if you can't find your exact drug, you just need to find out what type of drug. So that one's not an anticonvulsant.
No.
That one's more of a, it's a nerve.
It's a pre-GABA.
Oh, like a gabapentin. Okay, so that might actually be under another one.
Well,
Anybody else have another one?
We'll get back to you on that one. We'll type it below your question. Anybody have any other medications that they're interested in finding out the deficiencies associated with that? Okay.
Well, download your resource, guys. Take your time, play with it, give it to your parents, your friends. Let them look up and really just make sure that you're getting the nutrients you need to support the medications that you're taking. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, my doctor never told me that. And it's really just because they're just not educated on this aspect of medication, right? They're going to be given the formal side effects that are told to them from the company.
And like you mentioned earlier, it's not something that you're going to go, oh, doctor, I have a B12 deficiency, and the doctor's not, it's not associated with that medicine to look for those things. So as we start to learn more about all of these interactions and complications, then there's a lot that goes on. So Rosa asks about methotrexate. So that one, folate, that blocks folate. So folate always needs to be replaced with that one. And that's the biggest one with methotrexate, but there are some other Bs. So you want to be on a good B vitamin or eating all the foods that have Bs in them. But there's a lot of different Bs, so you need B1, B2, B3, B6, B9, B12, etc. So it's kind of simpler.
Like a B complex.
Yeah, it's simpler just to get a B complex, but you need one that's very high in the folate. So that blocks it. And then Vyvanse for ADHD. So
yeah, so that one's under your
that
opioids.
is really commonly used nowadays, and don't think it's got as many.
Yeah, this one's going to have your
nutrient
calcium,
deficiencies.
Magnesium, potassium, B12, B6, vitamin C. So those are for any of the opioids.
Okay, but that's not an opioid though.
That's not considered an opioid?
Yeah, no, the Vyvanse.
Oh, ADHD, I'm sorry,
stimulants.
amphetamine. Okay, methylphenidate. So just magnesium actually for that one.
Yeah, so that's not a bad one actually. So lots of magnesium.
So any
We know where
of
to
the
get
Vyvanse,
magnesium.
so you have Vyvanse, Adderall, Dexedrine, any of the Concerta, methylene, there's amphetamine and methylphenidate. So all of the ones that capture ADHD, magnesium's a big one. Now magnesium, I say only one. Magnesium is responsible for over 300 enzymatic functions in your body. So magnesium can just completely shift your whole world. If you're off in magnesium, it can do a lot of things that are disruptive, specifically sleep too.
Sleep, muscle cramps, constipation, anxiety, inability to sleep, heart, blood pressure. I mean, magnesium is just a huge nutrient mineral that we need a lot of in our bodies. And you get them from deep green leafy vegetables. It's kind of one of your main sources. So get out there and eat your kale, your bok choy, all your deep green leafies.
And take your Epsom salt baths.
And take your Epsom salt bath.
Topical magnesium, you know, they have creams and things like that, but Epsom salt that's the primary.
Soaks right
so
into
you
your
just
body.
soaks right through your skin.
Right, very
It's
relaxing.
one of the best ways to get.
Anyways, on that very calming note, I think we will close unless anybody has other questions. But if you do, just go ahead and type them in and we will respond as we're able to. And thank you for your interaction. Thank you for your questions. Please feel free to share this with any of your friends, neighbors, family, anybody that you think might be interested and might benefit from this information. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, thank you guys.
And next week we're going to be talking about, what you can do about food cravings. Actually, is going to be our topic next week. So we'll give you some highlights of different things you can do, activities you can do, other foods you can eat when you're really craving, a certain food, a certain sweet, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So if you have questions beforehand, feel free to shoot them on over to us and we'll try to address them in what we talk about tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, and grab your copy, guys. Don't forget it's leslieharrington.net/Vita, and it's like 50-something pages, so it's hard to scroll through and figure out all of the detailed answers for you, but you can find them in there yourself. And if you're not able to find anything, just reach out because we can pull that up for you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you in another week.
Have a good night, guys.